My entitled mother claimed I went missing after I fled to North Carolina due to her constant abuse. Now she falsely reported that I am abusing my child and possess illegal weapons, causing me to be harassed and miscarry. So I exposed all of her lies. Now she tries to see me, but no lawyer has taken her case, despite her false reports and lies. This will be part 1 because there is a lot. And I'm doing this to try to make it more fluid and less confusing. I've never posted here before. I just heard that this could be a good place to discuss this. So I was unfamiliar with what other information is typically included in these posts, besides the stories themselves. I'm nearly 25, so I'll be in about 2.5 months. My mother, as we'll call her, was always physically and verbally abusive. Stuff like convincing me I was a mistake and only the result of unwanted rape, which contributed significantly to my depression, self-harming thoughts when I was younger. There was a lot of physical abuse, such as kicking and hitting, and whenever I tried to address what I had to go through with her since I was an older teen, it was always dismissed, or she would either defend her actions or simply blame me for everything that happened, while completely ignoring my declining mental health. I never knew my father because, as I previously stated, I was always considered a mistake that shouldn't have been here in the first place, and I was only kept because her parents forced her to when she was a young adult. Which is why I believe she has always rejected me as her child. A lot. Growing up, I spent most of my time with my grandparents, particularly my grandfather, because she was either absent or abusive, and many family members were unaware because I spent so little time with them. But he was the closest thing I had to a father figure or a positive influence in the first place. Whenever I was not around, she would also go through a new guy every few months, if not weeks, due to her toxic personality. She was never able to maintain a stable relationship for very long, and when she did, it was only long enough to have children with various people before having a falling out with the guys, which happened several times. However, it was not uncommon for her to associate with ex-convicts or drug addicts, which is similar to who my half-brother's father was when I was a child. She would also get in trouble for issuing fraudulent checks, among other things. But because she went through so many men, I quickly learned not to get attached to any of them, which is why my grandfather is the closest thing I have to a father. She even woke me up several times in the middle of the night so she could go see random guys in hotels. When there wasn't a place for me to sleep, I just slept in the corner on the floor, while I could hear this guy fighting across the room on the only bed available in the hotel room. I quote, "V got so many stories." This was just a sampling of what I can share. Our major disagreement occurred nearly 2.5 years ago when she pulled me out of a car, threw me up against the side, and attempted to kick and scratch my face. As a result, a chunk of my back hair was bloodied and ripped out, and my sides were bruised so badly that breathing was painful for nearly 2 weeks. But I didn't go to the cops because my family didn't want me to know what was going on. I also have text record evidence that I can use to request that a family member admit that these events occurred. Of course, my mother pretended to be a victim by downplaying what happened to everyone and using the situation against me by claiming that I knocked her glasses off while trying to get her to stop calling at my face. After that, I cut her off entirely. No contact. She could still contact me if she wanted to, or if there was an emergency. She simply never did. This is all I have for part 1. I'll include more in the coming parts. But Aita, for finally wanting to publicly expose everything she's done to me, backed by evidence. Part 2. Again, there is a lot to write, and some people suggested that it be spaced out better. So I'm breaking this down into multiple sections to make it easier to read and understand. So my mother has always been like this in general. I have records and text threads that I can request as proof of her attempting to reverse. Blame me for situations in which she refused to accept responsibility, and when she wasn't passing her children off to their grandparents, she was passing them off to me as the parent, only to find an older sibling acting as the third parent, which was one of the other reasons I decided to cut her off after I cut her off and moved. I began to build my life on my own, becoming more mentally and physically stable. I got a new job, started dating, and eventually decided to start seeing my half-siblings. My only connection to witches is through my mother's fathers, not through her, because I couldn't stand being around her and dealing with her toxic crap fest or having the kids pass off to me while she went off to do whatever. For several months, she was trying to support an adult baby pacifier, driving them around and paying for their stuff, rather than supporting and using her money for what her own children and family needed. She has always been like that. Any other person would go all out for social points or whatever gratification she thought she was getting from it. If any of her children disagreed with her or tried to do anything else, she would physically and verbally abuse them. So I started seeing some of my half-siblings away from her and eventually became friends with one of her ex-partners. We had recently discovered that we shared many interests in general, and we had quickly become friends. For context, this ex had separated and moved away from my mother after witnessing and dealing with a lot of her toxic crap shortly after having children, and he had left several states away. But we became close friends, and eventually I started a relationship. From my side of the family, my grandparents were the only people I talked to and kept in touch with because of how toxic my mother was and how disconnected I was from her closer relatives like aunts and uncles. So when we tried to have a child and I became pregnant, she found out through them. I never wanted her to know, at least not until later because, for starters, I was already out of contact and had been for some time, and she's been physically abusive. I didn't want her to do something crazy and hurt me while I was pregnant. She found out near the end of her pregnancy. Anyway, I'll end this section right here because it's already long, and I'll add more in part 3, but I whipped it because I wanted to finally expose her for the actual abuse she's committed, rather than allowing others to sweep it under the rug. Part 3. Okay, some people needed more context and wanted to learn more about parts 3 and 4. So here's a summary of what happened. Also, thank you to anyone who took the time to vote or comment in the first place. I didn't expect this to get as many views as it did. Also, feel free to contact me if you require any of the evidence or my Facebook information. I will also be sharing on TikTok soon. So much for context. My grandparents were the first to find out about my pregnancy, and they were overjoyed to have a great-grandchild, particularly my grandfather. He's like a father to me. I even asked him to walk me down the aisle instead of a father after me, and my fiancée, Kay, became engaged. People also wanted to know my age and other details. I didn't know much about what was included in these posts because it was my first time posting here. But I'm nearly 20. I'll be in about 3 months. My and Kay's daughter is 6 months old now. So when my mother found out I was pregnant and we requested more information, I had cut her out nearly 2.5 years prior because she refused to apologize or accept responsibility for how she physically assaulted me. Several times. I also have records of family admissions and hospital records of questionnaires I had to fill out during appointments to ensure I wasn't relapsing with self-harm or depression as a result of the trauma she caused me. But my mother called, and I had to deal with telling her and talking to her about everything, which didn't go anywhere. She said, "How dare I say I will pay?" And this is exactly what I would say. Also, she makes me pay, and I'll never see my stepbrothers or niece again. Then there was a week-long silence. She never acknowledged that she had a grandchild or asked if I was doing well during my pregnancy. After a week of silence, we re-established communication, and I called. She began love-bombing me like crazy, summarizing her responses to just her emotions and how they were completely justified. Never actually said the word, "I apologize," simply trying to justify everything. Then she tried to inquire further about my pregnancy and how things were going with it. And I'm suddenly very excited about my new baby and myself. I tried to make it clear that we needed to work on our relationship first, as well as everything that had happened in the past, before we rebuilt. If Mother was sincere in her desire to form a bond now, it was not even acknowledged. This happened around 7 months into my pregnancy. I believe it happened a little earlier. But after that, she would constantly love her mother, going so far as to send her gifts on occasion. And Kay's co-parenting relationship with their children continued as usual. But there was the occasional comment she made about me that poked at my flaws, and whenever I tried to bring it up with her, she would either dismiss it as an emotional reaction or completely ignore or deflect it. Now, in the old town where we lived at the time, my mother had old friends who were still active in her life. Still, for context, However, around this time, we began to notice that we were being followed by various specific vehicles, and strange things were happening in general. For example, one time a car drove by our house and attempted to take pictures and videos of it several times. And there were several occasions when we awoke to someone simply idling in front of our driveway at 2 or 3 a.m. Strange things happen in the morning. There are a few more things, but I don't want to keep this too long. Kay proposed on Valentine's Day of that year, and we became engaged. My grandfather was especially pleased and commented on how lovely the ring was. My grandmother also noticed and congratulated us. I wasn't going to tell my mother because I knew how she handled my life events in general, let alone anything involving my new BFF. Now I have a fiancé. But she found out through the grapevine. She explained how I didn't have to hide it from her. I did not hide it, I just didn't talk about it. And then she simply commented on how she used the terms tacky or stupid. I'm not sure which it was, but I have the text record of proposing on Valentine's Day in the first place. And what a dumb romantic I was. No wonder I didn't tell her at first. Anyway, I went into labor at around 42 weeks. Yeah, overdue, LOL. During my birth, my extended family contacted me, and my grandparents were constantly checking in, but my mother barely spoke the entire time. But after nearly a full day of labor, I gave birth to my perfectly healthy baby girl, who we were able to take home a few days later. My grandmother also sent flowers. Thank you again. BTW, I doubt she is reading this. Then Mother was randomly assigned a TPO against Kay. We only learned about this later, but it is typically given to domestic abuse victims in order for them to leave their situation. As a result, the abuser is unaware of the incident. And all for one. She was several states away and was not in danger from him, let alone domestic abuse. Like, what? So I'm not sure why she was allowed to do this in the first place. And I only use quotation marks in this case because Kay is not the actual abuser. I know that temporary protection orders are extremely beneficial to actual victims. This was also when we realized we were being stalked, and about 4 months later, we saw her friends on Facebook. The people I mentioned lived in the same neighborhood and filed fake wanted persons reports against my fiancé, which I saved as evidence. It claimed he was wanted for child abuse and neglect. Absolute differences between how he appeared in various state registries. He also wasn't telling another lie, and to track us down or alert law enforcement if they see us. These public posts include pictures of our home vehicles, our address, our phone numbers, and photos of the 2 children I had with us at the time, as well as descriptions of everyone. A day or 2 later, while Kay was at work and I was at home caring for my baby while A and Kay's 2 children were hanging out somewhere in the house, nearly 8 cops arrived with guns, along with a CPS worker, and we were given a SWAT team under the guise of false reports and claims, as we had a CPS report filed claiming Kay had abused one of the children, which is also a lie, and I've seen the report. She even claimed that the abuse occurred while the child was in her care. Like, at least get the timing correct. I had to deal with cops with guns drawn and a cop demanding information, all while holding a baby in my arms. And Kay wasn't even home. I had to get him to come home from work to help with everything. There were also false claims and reports about Kay having tons of guns and weapons, with the literal wording being that he was armed like never before. The SWAT team does, and they discovered the hard way that all of the claims and reports were false and that everyone was perfectly safe and not in danger. This was also around the time I would have discovered my second child, and it appears that A was already on her way to get the other kids without informing us. It just so happened that CPS and law enforcement intervened first, and we discovered that she and one of her friends had filed the report in another state, and were now expecting to simply take all of the children under the guise of this report, and CPS was all for it. Meanwhile, the cops almost laughed in the background. I know I saw one of those donut lovers chuckling behind me. No offense to cops about how insane the false reports were, and like the dummy he was, Kay gave her a child because she sent threads of messages about how much time the kids could spend together and how good this will be for everyone, how everyone could be together during the next holidays, and how Kay and M would get to know and befriend her current friends. Looking back, it sounded insane from a third-party perspective, as did how they'd return to their normal 50 co-parenting arrangement after 4 weeks. and Kay agreed, and they met and drove back to her home state with the other 2 children. 4 weeks later, Kay receives an email stating that he will ensure that he never sees the children again, using the report that she literally admitted to making with one of her friends, Dot. And I now have evidence of another one of her friends admitting that this was all a premeditated plan, which, given the false reports and claims, as well as what those led to, is extremely illegal. We were not only being stopped outright, but also because of how our addresses and information were disseminated. Combined with the fake wanted posts, random people began chasing and following us around with weapons. We had to uproot our lives and relocate quickly, while dealing with a great deal of stress. Due to these events, I miscarried my second child. This is what I post for the 3rd quarter. I can create a mini update with the additional information. This requires a lot of reading. I know, and I believe anyone who reads this knows it's a big part, so this will be the second half of part 3 quarters. So around this time, my mother mailed me a large treadmill to help me lose the pregnancy weight from my first child. She had no idea I miscarried at the time, so it must have been my first. I quote, "V never used exercise equipment and never been overweight. I'm actually underweight. I spent a lot of my childhood dealing with depression, self-esteem, and image issues. She knew it. You wouldn't expect someone to spend that much money just to mail something that large." Then I saw through Kay, my fiancé's Facebook, that my mother was posting online on Facebook that I was barely 18. Not true. I'm nearly 20. Like I'm going to be in 3 months. How my stepfather impregnated me. WTF, no you. He was never my stepfather. I was mainly raised by my grandparents, and I only started dating after I was a legal adult and was well off and starting my own damn life. I was also with and had dated multiple other people before. My fiancé Derek was a jerk though, and I initiated my current relationship after I decided I didn't want to deal with my toxic mother anytime I wanted to see my half-siblings. And WTF, are we in an alien movie? Like WTF uses the word impregnate other to obviously make a fake story sound more dramatic? I wanted to and tried for a child and had my beautiful baby girl, which I wouldn't change for the world, and that he was a molester of her kids was in quote T. And even based on the own CPS report her friend filed, that wasn't what it said at all. And I saw the report and have a copy of it refer back to part 3, and that he physically and verbally abuses her oldest and my mother's oldest. And I've never been verbally or physically abused by Kay, but I have plenty of evidence of her doing that to me. Even hospital records of the past trauma from her. So I don't know what she's trying to achieve by claiming that, and that she was parentally alienated from me, like BC I left as a legal adult, to start my own life after I had it with being abused. I cut her off after she threw me up against a vehicle just for saying something she didn't agree with, and she was never alienated from me. She could have reached out to me, especially if there was an emergency. I left her my contact for that. I just stopped initiated interactions so she never reached out. As well as that, I'm currently missing and in danger. I'm not missing, nor am I in danger, and how my baby is also in danger. She is not just completely safe, which I've also shared proof of online, but if I have to deal with missing persons reports because of this crap. I also posted about how much she was struggling now having full legal custody of all of her kids and how she was needing free stuff. She doesn't have full legal custody of anything. It's still split custody. And law enforcement has pretty much dismissed everything she claimed and reported legally because of how many lies were in it, especially with the claims about weapons. Tried to make my own Facebook account at least 3 different times, but each time I did, I had to immediately appeal because apparently I had a past account that had gotten revoked for bad behavior. Essentially, I've never been on Facebook in my life, and this was my first time making an account. But anytime I also tried to load the page that would show me the evidence of such. It just gave me an error screen. Eventually, I got a hold of their full support team and was able to do age verification and show identity. And I was able to finally make my dang account posted more posts about me being in danger and missing, and how she needs people to help find me, and how concerned she was as a mother for me, but also posted a be on the lookout post about me for her own area, several states away. Like, what? And when I got online to respond to these, I was immediately blocked. Once she saw me online without a word from her, I don't care about her blocking me a can. Do what she wants. It's the fact that now I have to deal with you acting like a concerned mother saying I'm missing, but at the same time won't even acknowledge I exist when you actually see my stuff. Anyways, I've been posting proof of the various incidents and I fully intend to post more as I get the evidence and records too. I'll also be on TikTok soon too. I know the opinions and bias about being in an age gap relationship in the first place, but genuinely, I'm happy in my relationship, and it's never been like how my mother lied about it, and I've already lost so much because of the events that she caused. One of her friends also tried to message me indirectly from a secondary site, aside from Facebook, because you can't just confront me directly, right? With a fake alt account, trying to say how I started dating in high school and when I was a young teenager and how they knew me. But you also refused to face me directly at the same time. What? Elmao. For someone that talks a lot of crap, you really don't know much about my life. I dropped out of high school when I was like 16, and I only started dating after I was a legal adult. After I had cut contact with my mom, moved away from her and got a new job, and had dated several people before my now fiancé. Like what? You don't get to claim to know me, but at the same time claim absolute BS, which I can easily disprove with records and want show me who you actually are. At the same time. I later found out this was just one of my mom's current friends trying to hijack some of my post. The same one that actually admitted to my mother planning this entire thing, and most of everything they said was just banter. Shit. Anyway, thanks for reading. I hope whoever reads this is doing well. Follow along for any more updates of my crazy life events. If you all want more drama, I also genuinely don't care if I'm the asshole or not. I just wanted to share this crazy story because I know you all like the drama. Part 5 update aka full part 5. Okay, this has been a lot, but here is the full update context of my past post. My mother was physically and mentally abusive throughout my childhood, which I have hospital records for, and third-party evidence of family members admitting to knowing about it. And we've never had a good relationship because of that. I did eventually get into Facebook after I had to do extra age verification and go through several full help. People, I was finally able to make my account. For context, I wasn't able to get in for like the first 4 attempts because Facebook claimed I already had a past account that pretty much got banned for past behavior, which I had to settle because this was my first time ever making an account in the first place. And I immediately had to appeal the moment I first had to make my account. So I never even had a chance to use Facebook, let alone do anything that violated guidelines. I posted evidence of the fake claims and false wanted person stuff. I'll also be posting the medical records I have of dealing with the trauma from my mother on there as well. Once they get to me, because my side isn't just me making up lies, I have full third-party evidence. I also have text threads of different extended family members admitting to knowing about the different stuff she did too. For more clarification, I am nearly 20. Like I'm going to be in these next couple months. My baby is 6 months old. You guys do the math. I did get engaged with my mother's ex, and I'm currently, but it wasn't in any of the kind of ways people have been making up the lies about, with which I can also show evidence for. That quote is also part of the reason nobody for me or his friends will directly counter the evidence I've been posting on record. Fail. Only respond to my stuff through fake accounts on alternative sites away from Facebook because I've caught them in a lot of lies. As I explained, I had started my own life, got my own job, and was dating for a while before I initiated the relationship. So at the most, it's just an age gap relationship. It wasn't all this weird stuff that they are making up. And my fiancé wasn't around me when I was young, like my mother or her friends have tried to claim either, which there's also records for, and 2 who said I was made to resent my mother. That's completely not true at all. She did that herself. I cut contact with her and started up my own life way before my current relationship. And there's probably a reason you never addressed my first 2 parts. Going over specific events I can recall just off the top of my head that she's done, because that would be acknowledging she did abuse me. Which again, hospital records, which I'll eventually have to share. Same with a CPS report which claimed one of my half-siblings was being abused. That was made up by my mother and her friends, which had obvious stuff wrong with it. She even tried to claim it happened when she had the kid. Like what? My mother also posted another thing about me being missing and how concerned she was about me. And when I countered stating I wasn't, she just blocked me, which I couldn't care less about the blocking part if it weren't for the fact that she's spreading, that I'm missing and in danger when I'm not. Which, if people knew it enough, I could deal with false missing persons reports, which I tried my best to show. I'm not missing law, but it's the point that she can act like she's concerned about me, dot. But the moment she sees my stuff in me, I'm blocked without a word. It's just my point that how she acts privately versus to the public is night and day, and to one of my mother's friends who tried to spread more boys on my post. I never started dating in high school. I only started dating after I was a legal adult in the first place, and even before that, I dropped out of high school before my third year when I was like 16, which I definitely wasn't dating then in the first place, dot. So for someone who talks a lot of crap, you really don't know much about what actually happened throughout my life. This was from a comment I got. The definition of grooming has been changed and altered so much from what it originally meant that at this point, a lot of people just use it as an attack term for relationships people don't agree with, dot. And I would agree with this, considering in several age gap relationships groups, people were calling grown adults well past the age of minors groomers because the older person there were examples of both women and men had like a 15-year age gap. Like these people are legal adults. And guess what? That is all that will matter once we have taken full legal action. What was legal? And I started dating my fiancé after I became a legal adult. Again, he is not abusive. The most I have is an age gap relationship, and we had to relocate our entire lives because our address pictures of our vehicle, of us, of our home phone numbers, and descriptions were all illegally blasted online with fake wanted persons reports created by his friends. This is important. These things were not created by my law enforcement or any other legitimate organization. These were created by my mother and her friends. After we were swatted with fake claims and reports, the cops determined that no one was in danger. It's also illegal. In the course of dealing with this, we were pursued and stalked by several random people on multiple occasions. The stress of uprooting our lives and dealing with all the BS caused me to miscarry my second child. I've lost too much. I wasn't raised to despise others. I've been pushed for far too long dealing with my mother, and I've lost things I'll never get back as a result of various events, but I'm not going to trash her online. I never wanted to make this public, but when all of your private information is blasted online with easily disprovable lies, as well as claims that you are in danger and missing, I was forced to. And yes, there is probably a reason why they only respond to me with fake accounts on other sites. I've also demonstrated that both me and my baby are perfectly fine and safe. Obviously, I lost a lot, but we were physically safe and not being abused or threatened. I also have evidence of one of my mother's friends admitting that these entire events were primitively planned, which is extremely illegal given the fake reports and claims. And it's really ironic that one of my mother's friends was attempting to spread more BS and told lies about things before admitting them, so thanks for that, I suppose. So I'll keep sharing records and evidence, and if anyone can't find parts 3 or 4, it's because moderators removed my post because people were sharing it in random groups where it didn't belong, until they simply removed the post altogether. If anyone wants those parts, I still have a copy that I pasted down and can share with anyone who contacts me. But that is exactly what is happening. Otherwise, I'm just chilling and working on getting my plant business started. How are you all doing? Good. Okay, if anyone wants part 3 or 4, they'll have to contact me because it was removed. It mostly went over how my first pregnancy went, dealing with fake wanted reports, uprooting our lives, dealing with law enforcement, and getting SWAT teamed, as well as the SBS, and how a few other events occurred at it. Many updates, since you stated that you wanted to know any updates on what happened. I recently discovered that my mother is unable to obtain a lawyer or legal assistance to justify any of her false reports or fake claims at this time, as lawyers are literally looking at what she's claimed and either fully refusing to help in the first place due to what she's been spreading around online, which is based on easily disprovable lies. Or one person claimed that one lawyer would have charged her thousands of dollars just to defend her against what she was making up, legally or not. Sue. Oh, that is looking good for us at least. So I now have complete confirmation that cops, law enforcement, and even lawyers have literally dismissed her because of the nature of the situation in the first place. I quote, V also contacted another member of my extended family to confirm whether she gave my phone numbers to any family members who did not have them while I was pregnant. I mainly want to know this because she claimed she shared my phone number with several extended family members who wanted me to contact them when I was pregnant, but I never had their numbers at the time, and no one ever contacted me. So if she never shared my phone number with them, I would have text records showing yet another time.